Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Diane. So today I thought I'd share with you a little experiment I was doing on weaving fabric. So as I have lots of scraps, I've been trying to think of different ideas of ways to use them up, and I've used patchwork in the past and I thought this would be something different for using up long strips. I've also used a couple of large pieces for this because I wanted to mix in the colours, but two of the pieces were quite small offcuts that I had at the end. So you may find that sometimes you end up with long sort of strips from the end of cutting out patterns. So when we cut out patterns for clothing or whatever we're making, we tend to have all those bits around the side where it's not quite big enough to do anything, and you do get a lot of the long strips up the side of dresses and things, which are pretty useless for anything else. But we don't want to be throwing all those bits away all the time, and it's such a shame when we spent money on fabric, and also it saves it going into landfill. So it's always good to look for ways to use it up, and also it's just something fun to try out. So I'm going to show you what I did. So what I did first of all was I chose 4 different fabrics. Now you could use a lot more than this, but I thought I'd just stick to 4 for this first one and then have a little play around with laying them out. So I've cut them into strips, so I'm going to show you that now, and then I've had a little experiment with the weaving. So I'll show you that first of all. So for my weaving, this is what I'm going to try out. So I've cut these strips here. They are 7 centimetres wide each one. Now I wasn't sure which colourway to go for, so I've just grabbed some that I thought looked nice together. This one has got all different colours in, so I thought it would go nice with these, and then that one just to add another bold colour in there because I didn't want it to be too wishy-washy. So, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold them like this. I'm going to stitch them and then press them so that there's no raw edges showing. So I'm going to do that with each one first of all before I start any weaving. So fold them all in half and then press the seam so that it's going to be on the back. And then when I've completed the piece, whatever it looks like, I'm probably going to back it in some interfacing. So that's my plan for now. So of course, when I got my strips, then they were all raw on the edges. Now I do suppose what you could do is you could either overlock them or you could just press them back at this point. And if you've got a good overlap to the wrong side and you're going to be backing it anyway, it should be fine to just leave it like this. But what I thought I'd do was I'd stitch them so that they're not going to pull apart once they're woven together. So I've stitched them all together. So this is my pile of strips. I'm now going to go and press them so that they're all nice and flat before I begin. And then after this, of course, we've given them all a good press so that they're all nice and flat. And then now it's a case of laying them out to see what they will look like. So whichever way that you lay them is going to affect how the finish effect looks. So I thought I'd go with laying the 2 similar colours side by side, and then having woven through it the 2 sort of darker colours. So that was my plan, but then I thought I would go for a dark light contrast. So that's what I've ended up with. And then the next challenge was what to weave it on. So now I've got all my strips like this and they're all pressed. So what I'm doing is just laying them out and having a look. So I thought if I had these 2 colours next to each other, because they're sort of similar, and then if I weave these 2, the green and the black, through it and see what that looks like. Now I need something to hold it in place. I might get my husband at some point to make me some kind of frame, but for now I'm either going to pin it to the carpet. So of course I haven't got any kind of loom or anything like that, and I did think I could either pin it to the ironing board or pin it to the carpet. So either way there's a chance that I'm going to leave pins in the ironing board or pins in the carpet. So I thought I'd have a look round and see what I could find. Just give me an idea of what I can do, and I'm also going to secure it with some stitches as well if I get an effect that I like. So as you can see, I've ended up with a cardboard box. So the cardboard box was really good because the pins stuck straight into it. Now I know you could probably use safety pins at this point, and you can't really put them, you can put them in tight, but it's never going to keep it as tight as if you had it on some kind of loom for weaving. So if you've got some kind of frame that you can pop it into, that would be better. Now I did think sort of a large old picture frame would be great for this. So if you can find one, or if you've got one that you're not using, you could take out the glass, you could take out the picture, you could just use the frame and just sort of pin or tack your main fabric to it before you start weaving. I had a look round and I couldn't find anything like that, so that's why I ended up using a box. Now my husband is quite handy and he's got lots of offcuts of wood in the garage, so I'm going to get him to just knock me up a little frame to do that on in future, because I think I will be doing this again. It's quite fun, it's a great way to use up those scraps, and you do end up with something a little bit different at the end of it. So here's what I did. Hey, I've managed to get it off the box with quite a few mishaps because it kept coming apart. I've put some interfacing on the back, look, that's just a light interfacing, and then I'm going to back it with a piece of lining and stitch all the way around it before deciding what I'm going to do. I think I am going to use it as one side of a bag actually, and then for the other side I think I will pick out one of these other fabrics and maybe a different one for a shoulder strap. So I'll have a think about that, but yeah, that's what I'm going to do now. Back it with a piece of lining fabric so that it's all secure, and stitch all the way around. And then when I decide what shape I'm going to cut out, I will stitch that shape into it as well so it doesn't all unravel. So once it's backed and it's in place, it'll all be stable. So yeah, that's something different. I'm quite happy with that. So now here's what I've ended up with. So I think it looks quite nice and colourful. So this would be really good for making sort of mats that you need to have things on, sort of like pot holders for plants and things like that. I did think it would be quite nice for making placemats, but then you've got the issue of when you're cleaning them, if food gets sort of stuck in between where you've woven, that might be quite hard to clean. I don't know, let me know if you've done this and that's what you've used it for. And the reason I'm saying that is because at this point it's now got the woven fabric, which of course is double because I doubled it up, stitched it first and then pressed it. And then it's got a layer of interfacing behind it, which is stuck to it, so it's keeping it all sort of in place. And then I was going to use lining fabric, but I used the green, so I had a big enough piece of the green to back that. So now that's got the sort of 3 layers, so already it's feeling quite stable. Now what I think I'm going to use mine for is the front of a bag. And what I think you should do is, if you're going to use it in that way for a bag or a purse and you're going to be cutting it out, obviously if you want it both sides, you're going to need to do 2 pieces like this, or do a much larger piece on a much larger frame so that you can cut 2 pieces out. This was just an experiment, so this is what I've got for now, so it's just going to be one side. So I'm going to cut it out, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my template on it, and then when I've done that, before I cut it, I'm going to stitch all the way around the outline of what the bag shape will look like. I'm going to do this because I don't want it all sort of coming apart. Even though it's stuck to the interfacing, I want to make sure it's nice and secure. So I've got that many odd bits of fabric lying around. There are all different combinations that you could do, so I'm really excited to have a look at what other sort of patterns and designs I can make. I've also had a little look at some images on the internet and just put in fabric weaving after I'd done this, just to see what other people had done. And somebody was doing it on the diagonal, so they got all their pieces laid out and they had got it on a frame, I think. And then they sort of threaded it through diagonally, and then that gives you a completely different look. And also, depending on what kind of shades of fabric you use, some of it just looked like boxes, like 3D boxes. I'm sure there's a name for this. It looked really good. So there's all different ways that you could play around with this. Please let me know in the comments below if you've had a go at this, and if it's something that you do regular. I would love to hear from you, and also different ways that you've used it. I did also think it would be really nice on a much smaller scale for adding details to clothes. So when I made the Davenport dress, there were little sections just here at the shoulders on the Davenport dress that you stitched in. Now I thought something like this, much smaller pieces woven, would be a fabulous detail on that. So I'm now thinking I might like to make a top from the Davenport dress with woven sections here at the top. I'm going to have to write that down so I don't forget, so I've got that for a future project. So that's something I'm thinking of. Literally anywhere where you've got small amounts or small panels on a top or a dress, it would be great to use this in some way with some of the fabric and maybe a contrast in something different, just woven in to give it a bit of detail. So that's just something to think about. I would love to hear your thoughts. So please let me know. If you're unsure about how to pair your colours together, you can have a look at the colour wheel. So I'm going to insert an image of the colour wheel. For those of you that have not seen one before, I'm sure most of you have because you're all sort of into sewing and dressmaking and so on if you watch this channel. And what it does is, if you look at it, you can go for things that are either side of your colour or you can go for the one opposite, and that usually goes really well with the colours that you're working on. So if you're not sure about what colours to put together, you can print off an image of the colour wheel and have a look and have a play around with it in that way. So that's all for today. I hope you've enjoyed that. Please let me know how you got on and if you try this out for yourselves. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.